Croatian Women's Network, and welcome to another episode of our Croatian Women of Influence Leading Ladies podcast. I hope you're all keeping happy, safe, and healthy together with your families. And I know you join me in hoping that this pandemic will soon stop disrupting our lives and allowing us to live a little bit more normally and without all the restrictions. And various countries around the world are experiencing various intensities of the pandemic. And we do hope everyone is keeping happy and healthy and safe. And if anyone is ill, we wish you a very speedy recovery. We also send our prayers and positive thoughts to the citizens of Ukraine. And we encourage our members and our listeners to contribute and help humanitarian aid organizations that are on the ground helping the citizens of Ukraine, and in particular, those organizations that are supporting the mainly women, children, and senior refugees who are fleeing Ukraine for countries around Europe and beyond. May they find safety and safe haven, and may they have a speedy end to this conflict and an opportunity to return to their homes as soon as possible. With that, today, I am delighted to introduce a 2020 Croatian Women of Influence Award winner in the category of Leadership and Innovation, Liliana Čanadić, also a fellow Canadian. Liliana, welcome.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
It's so nice to virtually see you again. It's been too long. How are you doing, and how is your family doing?
Listen, the world definitely changed since last time we had coffee in Zagreb, just at the beginning of the pandemic. So I'm glad that we are here, we are healthy, and we're able to connect. Thank you for the question. Thank you for asking. Family is good. I think, we were able to maintain very close family ties all throughout the pandemic. And thanks to social media, we connect daily. And everybody's healthy. And, from the beginning of my adventure to the north, since then, I have 2 grandchildren. I didn't have one when I went up
Congratulations.
there. Thank you.
Very good. Well, you mentioned being in the north. Now, when we first met you and you wowed us at the conference with your remarkable speech and generosity of spirit in sharing a very big aspect of your life, you were actually in the Northwest Territories of Canada, which I think is something very rare for Canadians, but certainly in particular for a Croatian. And now I understand we find you in Saskatchewan. You've lived in many places across Canada, which again is a very unique characteristic. Give us some insight into what that's like. You've seen so much of the country. Share with our listeners what that is.
Thank you for that question. Just to reflect on the, on the event itself, on the award events and doing the speech, it was such a unique opportunity for me to share a little bit of my history and the path. And in a big way, a largest way, it was healing. And some of the things that I have shared, even my family who was there had never heard before.
Oh, wow.
It was very emotional. And
it was very emotional. Would you be open to sharing with our listeners, those who were not there, a little bit about what you shared with us that day? Because you really wowed us. It was a deeply personal and intimate story that no one saw coming. And so we're even more honored that you shared things that were a first even for your own family.
Without being too emotional, I think maybe just a little bit, I think it was really important for me to share some of the key aspects of, not just life of a child who was adopted, but also immigrant, in the new world. So I tried to combine those 2 aspects, and the key messages there were that, I was able throughout my life and experiences and learning to understand and forgive, because, you do have particular story that's been shared with you around how this came about, how you came about, and how, what had happened in your lifetime, but without actually connecting and speaking to my birth mother, and really going through the life experiences myself and having my own children and going through all these notions, I don't think I was able or ready to understand and forgive in a way. So, you know, and then part of that closure actually happened when I went to the north, and when I started exploring and wanted to connect, and then reached out. My mother's family is from Bosnia, from a village around Kupres called Zloselo. So I did reach out, thanks to social media. I did reach out to see if anybody has, you know, any knowledge or any connection that they can share, and you know, and that happened. And so family members reached out, and also people who are still live in the village reached out, and it was amazing to me that people did reach out, but in some ways, it's still what had happened was still considered a big secret. So, you know, my mother was a young woman, very young, when she left the village and went to Osijek, which is in Croatia, and really struggled with, you know, trying to survive, but also then ended up having a baby out of wedlock. And in those days, you know, that's something that you don't talk about.
Big taboo.
And right. And then in the village itself, this still is a taboo. And it is considered a secret. So I did, you know, however, you know, there are people who were willing to share the information and ask me not to share the source, which was really interesting. And it took me a number of months to actually really make decision to connect with my mother. And then when I did that, I had to prepare myself that I wanted to question myself, first of all, what am I trying to accomplish? But then just to make a decision that I'm going to be open and listen, you know, without trying to not have any judgment, trying to, you know, just pause for a moment, all the things and stories that I've been told, and then listen. And that was the most amazing experience of my life, that really created ability to forgive, and also created a closure. Just speaking to her. So anyway, this is part of the story. The second part that I really wanted to share was around life of the immigrants. And sometimes, you know, we create the stories, we create the narrative, and we go home, we share all the greatest and the best. But, you know, there is other side to that. Sure. And other side that I have experienced is challenges in living in very diverse environment, which, you know, Croatia at the time when we left wasn't. And I did have exposure. I did work in North Africa, in Libya specifically, and had exposure to, you know, people from all over the world. But, you know, when I came to Canada, it still was, there was lots of learning, and it is to this day. And around, you know, how do you actually really interact? How do you preserve your own heritage and your own culture, but also interact in a meaningful way with other cultures? And it was a hard path. You know, I didn't want to minimize, I don't want to minimize it. And I wanted to communicate that, use the forum and the platform to say that the path is not easy. It is possible. It is an important one. And, you know, you put on the path for a reason. But, you know, issues around racism and, you know, the inequity and, you know, inequality and these kind of things, they're very, very alive. And they are alive to this day. In some ways, what has been happening in last couple of years for me reminded me on those days when we just came to Canada.
We just came to
you know,
Canada.
You know, it does happen, because when people are facing unknown and they're stressed and they're challenged, you know, this creates the opportunities for things that we don't necessarily expect will happen.
It's true. Thank you for sharing that. And such a deeply personal story. And I think such a courageous decision that you made. We talked in a couple of podcasts ago about those decision points in life that really are transformative. And for you, it was a healing opportunity. And I love the way you framed it about first considering, what am I trying to accomplish? Because many people might just say, well, you're trying to meet your birth mother. That's just a natural thing. But you took it a step further to say, what am I hoping to accomplish? Because you didn't know what reception you would receive. It could have maybe gone a different way, which would have been perhaps very hurtful. I find it interesting. You talk about the immigrant experience, and right now, certainly we're seeing an immigrant crisis across Europe, now with the war in Ukraine, prior to that, Syria. But certainly in Canada, as a multicultural country, we are viewed by the world as a place where all are welcome, and they are. And I think with that comes a perspective that there isn't racism in Canada, and that that's not an experience that happens here. Moreover, we're seeing that conversation become much more predominant here in Canada, which is a good thing, though I would observe that it's often attributed to people of color. So as white women, I think people would be surprised to hear that racism was part of our immigrant story as well. Can you comment on that?
Caroline, I absolutely agree. And it is something that is not spoken about publicly, because I think, you know, people like me and probably people like you don't want to be perceived as insensitive, and you don't want to minimize experiences of people of color that are really, you know, it's something that you cannot even assume to understand, right? You don't understand until you live it. But you're absolutely right in making those connections and commonalities. And actually, if I talk, you have opportunity to talk about my experiences across the world, like you will actually, and I have made the connections of how we are so much more similar than different.
Yeah.
And, you know, hopefully there is an opportunity when, you know, when the healing is advanced and, you know, it takes place over time, and forgiveness is given, and people are just able to actually deal with their own grief, that hopefully we will come together and then be able to share this in an open forum, because, you know, experiences, I can actually I can pinpoint all the experiences I had when I was in Croatia, took them to North Africa, to Libya, took them to Ontario, to Northwest Territories, to Saskatchewan. You can actually pinpoint those experiences that are so similar.
Incredible.
Right? So that's a connection. This is I think what actually connects us. And it's unfortunate that sometimes, you know, for all different reasons, sometimes good, sometimes bad, that we highlight the differences, right?
Yes.
What is different about us, and why are we so special and more special than somebody else? While the core of it, and, you know, the core values are very, very similar, and experiences are very, very similar.
Especially in the immigrant experience. Now, Liliana, you are an executive in the healthcare industry. We're coming out of 2 years of intense pandemic operating the world over. And you in particular, I think very uniquely have, because of where you have worked, have had a lot of exposure to Indigenous Canadians as well. And I wonder if you could give some insight to our listeners about what that is like. And we've talked now about inherent bias and racism. And we know in Canada, certainly, that is a large factor that affects the Indigenous communities. And I wonder if you have some thoughts on those similarities and what insights you've gained in all these years of working with those communities as well.
You know, Caroline, I personally always had an interest, and maybe it's linked just to my personality, but also just the whole nursing aspect of life that I've lived. Because in nursing, we look at the person as a whole person, not just, you know, a person who has a disease or this condition, but really, or needs some kind of medical help, but person as a whole person. So that, in my mind, was actually the underlying I guess underlying lens that I have used to interpret the world. And in one of the greatest, I guess, learning for me was when I went to so I always had interest in Indigenous cultures, always tried to learn, to connect, to understand.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I think it comes from your own values of heritage. You know, your own heritage. Right. And whatever you do in your own life to maintain your own heritage, this, I think, it spills. Like you don't have a different kind of lens to look at different cultures. At least this was experience for me. Right. So I was always interested in the culture, in you know, the practices, the spiritual practices, the foods, connecting with people, hearing their stories. And by nature, I am a storyteller. So I always like to listen to other people's stories and then, you know, interpret my own life stories through their eyes. And so I always had that interest. So I didn't really go in the North totally, you know, innocent or ignorant. But I was shocked I absolutely was shocked to experience what I've experienced.
Okay.
And it makes me emotional because I was in this belief that lots of things that I've lived in Canada at that point, probably over 30 years.
Okay.
And some of the things that I've learned there, I never knew. And I questioned, like, how come I never knew? You know, one of the things was that, you know, last residential school closed in 90s.
Yes.
This is our lifetime. This is my lifetime in Canada.
Yes.
Right?
It's shocking.
And, that was, you know, it was something that I really, you had to have conversation with yourself to see, like, how did I do?
How do we not know?
How did I, right?
Yeah.
The other piece, you know, I think into my career was driven by passionate curiosity. I always wanted to explore that next best or better thing, or, you know, thing that I think I can make a difference in, or, you know, is a challenge. But in reality, you know, I think I was really pulled into an area or part of the world where there is a huge pain and suffering.
Okay.
I think I was just pulled there. And for whatever reason, is it because I myself am resilient person and I have like a very positive outlook. I was fortunate to have that kind of thing, you know, positive outlook on life and world. But maybe for that reason, I was always pulled into an area where there is pain and suffering. And then combining this with nursing and the aspect and the ways that nursing is seeing the world, you see, you know, through nursing lens, I think this was just the purpose. So the other thing then that I saw there is that pain and suffering that comes from, you know, trauma that generations of people have lived through. And in Northwest Territories, I had a responsibility. I was chief operating officer. I had responsibility not just for health services but also social services, and that meant responsibility for foster care, for child and family services. The experience, just hearing the stories, reading about the stories of some of the children that are 3 or 4 years old, this is something that changes your life. You're a changed person. And then, you know, when my daughter visited, my daughter is, she's a young woman. She's just going to 23 right now. When she visited and actually seeing, because, you know, her life was even more, you know, innocent than mine was when I was there. But then she came there and we went to the museum and then we saw the stories, heard the stories, and she experienced the environment. It so deeply affected her. I remember her telling me a story about how even when she was flying down, that she just felt like experienced deep darkness. And she's a very sensitive person, like she's sensitized, you know, that she's more sort of aware of the environment that maybe some of us. And then when we were going through learning about the history and going to the museum, like it was so emotional for her. Like I think she cried, you know, for a period of time. So seeing that and seeing that, you know, I'm not the only one, like my life was much longer, but, you know, seeing a young person who is connecting with what it actually means was just absolutely amazing. Experience that really changes you as a person.
To be sure, but clearly you have that nurturing and healing impact given the profession that you chose of nursing. I'm not surprised you're drawn to an opportunity to heal pain and suffering as well.
Yeah.
You talked about resilience. And clearly you have it. And at our last podcast, Vlatka Hlupic talked a lot about resilience and finding your own resilience and knowing your purpose. And you touched on that. I wonder if you would share, what do you view as your purpose and how do you build and maintain your own resilience?
You know, like I really truly believe that we are all resilient. And if you actually look at the definition of resilience, it's really the ability to overcome the difficulties, right? To in some kind of really creative and fast or expedient way, overcome the difficulties that you're facing. And I think, you know, when really we're all resilient in different way, and we wouldn't be here if you're not resilient. Right, because we had to survive on this planet with everything that's thrown at us, and it's different for our generation or younger generation than it was for, you know, my you know, grandmother or my mother-in-law. So, but, you know, personally, I think resilience partially comes from nature and partially from nurture. From nature, I think it does start for me with that genetic makeup. Because when I actually saw the environment where my grandmother and my mother grew up.
Okay.
And this is where the connection starts. When I saw that environment where people on the bare land, a little bit of soil, lots of rock, when they build lives for generations, that to me is absolutely, unbelievable. I still question it. So that environment is very, very similar to what I've seen in the north.
Oh, wow.
Very similar, rock and a little bit of soil. And on top of it, a very extremely cold temperature.
Yes.
In that part of Bosnia, there is also winters are very cold, but it's probably the north is like the far extreme of that. And then, coming to Saskatchewan, this is exactly the same. The environment, the land the soil actually is not very rich, and the land is open. There's lots of light, open land, open spaces. But when I imagine the people, the settlers that came first to we have farm here, and there is a original house on the land, and then the new house that they have built. But this is a family that came in with a horse and a buggy, and they, on that bare land, built life for generations, and now we are enjoying it.
Talk about resilience.
This is resilience.
And
right?
courage.
So part of the nature, the genetic makeup, I think this is one of the enablers. And I mentioned earlier, I just have a view of life in a sort of more positive way than maybe some other people will be. And so that sort of helps. And then there is a whole nurture. And, I think in my life, I was fortunate that I just had to connect my whole life and resilience that created me as a person today with the women in my life that were able to propel me all throughout. So, starting with the mother who had to make the most difficult decision a mother will make, that, she wasn't able to care for me, but she will make sure that there are good people who will. So that next woman who actually helped, who was, I called her grandmother, but it was really a woman who my mother left me with. And so she has made sure that those early years of my life are, fulfilled and meaningful and beautiful. And I felt caring and love. And then her daughter, who then took me on.
Oh, wow.
And then when I got married, my mother-in-law, who was really my champion in life, professional and personal. She was my first head nurse in my first job in nursing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And then, coming to Canada, a woman who I think we were in Canada probably a couple of months, and I went to an interview with my son in tow. He was 3-4 years old at the time, and didn't have car, didn't have resume.
Right.
Just went on the bus, picked up, responded on the ad in the newspaper, and met this woman. And she hired me right on the spot. And she has been mentor in my life all throughout my career.
Oh, wow.
And just gave me the boost. Yes, I know you can. I knew you will do it. And and that continues on. And that continues on throughout my my life. So I think the part of resilience is that opportunity. You can call it fortune, you can call it fate, you can call it just people that had their own purpose in lifting other people up. And it does happen to me that these were women at different stages of my life that just made it happen.
How extraordinary. You talked about people who mentored you. I know in your professional career, mentorship is a constant, and you have mentored many. Why do you think that's important? And how do you experience that opportunity? Oftentimes, I know even myself, when I've mentored, and many mentors will say, I get more out of it than the individual that you're mentoring or championing. And I think that's something that we don't talk enough about, is that you can champion people and be their mentor without a formal relationship. And you've just beautifully explained all those instances in your life. How do you come at mentorship and championing others?
I think for me, the most important thing in mentorship is that it comes naturally. I know that, through organizational life, sometimes you do have people and they also have a great intent. They think, okay, I think I need to assign a mentor to this person. And I've experienced that, but I don't think I have grown through this form as much as I've grown to one that came naturally. So a natural meaning, I have gathering in my house, and it's a gathering of women that I, connect with on a regular basis, and they're all on different culture. And this has been, sort of something that I really enjoy. And we have conversations about things. So one of the routines I have, where we, in our family home in Ontario, is because it is located in the forest. Right, so there's lots of great walks that you can go to. So typically, when we have visitors, guests, friends coming over, then we go for a walk. And my routine is to say, okay, who is talking today? So one person will talk, and we all just listen. There is no conversation. There is no need to have a conversation, but just listen to what this person is going through right now. I think I've gained through that more than anything, just hearing where people are in those moments in life. And I think it's probably very beneficial for them to just put it out and know that there is somebody who is actually listening to what they have to say, because that's one of the challenges today. We all want to tell our story, but there is so little time to actually really tell the story. So, right. So we have that limited opportunity to actually share. And then, the other part of it is, people seeking that mentorship. Right. So like I just had conversation with one of my mentees yesterday, and we had a checkpoint to see what is working, how is this working? Is the frequency working? And, what are we going to do? And the person is taking leadership course, and really sort of reached out and just saying, like, would you be able to mentor me? Like in a very shy way, thinking, oh my God, you're provincial chief nurse. Am I really going to have that courage? But this was part of that person's growth. Because one of the things that he identified is that he needs to be able to define his own vision and purpose. And how is he going to do that? Like, who are the people that he wants to hear from? And this is how he reached out. Right. And I think, to me, like, it is so genuine and so unscripted and so so deep, because you cannot have this kind of relationship without. It's not about leadership skills or competencies. It is also about who you are as a person. And, this is something that we have touched. Every conversation we have to touch on that. What is our, heritage? Like, how did that experience informed who I am today?
Absolutely. So it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've lived all over the world, and you have built an incredibly successful career and family life. I'm curious, as someone who just picks up and goes every few years to a new opportunity, are you driven by the opportunities? Do you seek them out? And how do you find satisfaction in your personal and professional life against the backdrop of always having to resettle in a way?
Well, that's the piece that I enjoy the most, actually.
Okay.
Just being new in the new environment, because I think where the beauty lies is, first of all, this open opportunity to learn anything that you want to learn. You can actually gain any experience that you are ready to gain. So you really have an open field of opportunities. And the other piece is, I always enjoy to being new in a community or environment or organization. I really love that, because I think it opens up the possibility of just giving people that encouragement to do the right thing. Because, I think when you come and you see things with new eyes and ears, and it is my core belief that people know what needs to be done. So, and I'm referring to people that I would work with, like frontline nurses or frontline healthcare providers or physicians. They know what needs to be done. but often they get into the organizational structures and systems that we have built that really do not enable them to do what they know needs to be done for a person or for a patient that, you know, that's in front of them. So, you know, being new and seeing this and actually just giving people that, yes, because people will ask you, like, you know, what do you think? Well, you know what needs to be done. Yes, just go and do it. And I think that is the most satisfying part of you know, my every new beginning, and I really enjoy that. And then, you know, I try to think about how all these experiences informed my life. And like, I cannot not to go back to what I mentioned before. You know, in healthcare, we talk about determinants of health, and we know that, you know, health is more than just absence of a disease. Health, somebody's health depends on so many different factors, you know, on their income, on their social status, on their, you know, the engagement and their working conditions, on housing or food, on healthy behaviors that they engage, on connection, the social connection with the land and the water and the environment. So all these things actually inform your health. And so when I actually went back and thought, okay, you know, in Croatia, one of where I did start my nursing career, and I think people today, when I talk to nurses, they're shocked to learn that, you know, my nursing was in high school. So by the time I was 18, you know, I was fully fledged, confident nurse, and I
ready
thought,
to go.
Here I am going to change the world, right? But while now the basic for nursing is a university degree, right? So there is that whole even age difference. If you think being 18 and being 23, 25, you know,
just life experience.
Yes, it is. But, you know, like I didn't think this is so. I thought, well, I'm here and I'm ready, right? And highly functional. And, you know, this is how I did start. So, but when I think about that, you know, of course, you know, what informs your own life is because my childhood experiences impact, you know, what happens, and childhood experiences overall impact what happens to you in life. It is one of the determinants of health. And then also, you know, the whole sense of neighborhood, right? The neighborhood, the environment that you live in and how you feel, you know, you grow as a person in that environment, how that environment supports you and people that you grow up with support you. Also the economic stability, you know, in those days, and this is how it was, you know, we had that very, you know, had a system that sort of, it seemed like you were really stable. There weren't that many big changes happening during your growing up. And same, like education, the core, you know, my foster mother or foster parents, I should say, they were the ones who informed that piece. You know, the advice was very simple, but it turned out to be the most important advice of my life. To say, you know, they knew I wanted to go to university. I was an excellent student. That's why I went into nursing school. It was one of the opportunities in my hometown, right? Only excellent students went to nursing school, and you knew it will, you know, it will allow for a good livelihood, for the income, job, and all those kind of things. I didn't know at the time that it informs your whole life, not just professional but also personal. It was always very, very helpful career path that help you on both of these spheres. So, you know, so that piece was very. So their advice was that, you know, we know that you want to go to university, but, you know, we think you should really pick a profession that will give you a skill set, right? And then you can fly from there. And that happened to be the most important advice, because by the time I finished high school, I had a career, I had a job, had good income, and I could do whatever you want.
And you have flown from there.
And I have,
in every step forward.
That was so important. That just simple advice, and just think about that. And then, you know, when I went to Libya, like that was something. In those days, you know, there were no computers. You couldn't Google and find out what the Libyan culture was all about. You know, so I come there with
what a shock.
Sorry?
What a shock.
Yeah. And then, so here we are, 14 of us, right? They take our passports. We can't go anywhere, right? But the learning was out from the health perspective, from public health perspective, was tremendous. You know, we lived in the building that was just for healthcare workers. And I remember looking through the window and seeing the community there and seeing little children who were playing on the piles of garbage. Right. So you think, oh my God, like, so there is a significant piece in the structure of the society that was missing. Right, that you think, oh my God, you know, of course, you know, what we are seeing in the clinic is the result of what we're seeing, right? So it was a reflection of the society and the societal structure. And of course, the whole piece around access to food and access to water. These are the very important consideration during my life there. And then, you know, when I came to Canada, I came to Ontario, which is exactly how we imagined the North America is going to be. And really my first 8 years in Canada, that whole Canada is like Ontario, right? And whole Canada is not like just Ontario, like Oakville, right? And those that are familiar with Oakville, like it's a very kind of, it is your dream town, right? Whatever we sort of imagine is going to, you know, Canada is going to look like. But then you learn, you know, when I started working in downtown Toronto, you learn that not whole Canada is like Oakville, right? So some of the experiences there were really around importance of education, importance of literacy, because it's very difficult to navigate the world and navigate the healthcare world if you're not literate. And, you know, I remember reading the book around how do you communicate to healthcare providers, like telling people in public how to communicate and how to use particular words so they actually hear what you're saying, right? Like what I'm experiencing is very unusual for me. It's new. It is not, you know what I mean? So that's really important, but not everybody is able to do that. Especially when you're a newcomer, you don't have vocabulary to use particular words so your doctor or nurse understands you.
Particularly.
And then the whole aspect around diversity, that was a big thing that really colored my experience in healthcare in Ontario. Diversity and inclusion together. And then, you know, when I moved on to Northwest Territories, I talked about that experience a little bit about how strong it was from the perspective of trauma and the children, and you know how the trauma that they experience and the generations of people before them experience inform their lives, because you know what they say is that it takes about 7 generations to actually change that experience, right? And this is with intervention. This is not without doing nothing, right? So that is really informed my life, but also my nursing life in a very different way, and as well as, you know, the importance of the connection, spiritual and actual real physical connection with land, with water, and with the environment. That was such an important part of the culture that I learned from Indigenous people. And then, of course, you know, coming to Saskatchewan, like we have been coming to Saskatchewan for many years, over 12 years. We had a farm here, and it did start from that, you know, respect or love for heritage, because my husband and my children are falconers. So this is how we started coming in for falconry meets, because people from all over, not just all over Canada, but all over the world come to experience falconry. And this is an amazing environment because of the open skies,
of course,
endless skies. And then, of course, you know, I think in some secretive way, I think it reminded the space and open, you know, land. It reminded my husband of our home, which is Slavonia, where, you know, we have in some ways similar kind of environment. And then so this is how then, you know, we purchased the farm, and for many years we have been coming here. I used to call it the digital detox. You know, we will come in, there is nothing here, no TVs, nothing radio, but
fantastic.
And of course, you know, we are all in the family. We are all, you can say, we are all hunters. We all have firearms licenses and are hunters. And to me, like, I don't really hunt myself. I don't have a need to kill anything. But, you know, I think it was really important for me to actually be involved. And again, it's for safety reasons, and then also from preservation of nature reasons. And I think hunting really teaches you a lot about that. You know, how do you preserve life and nature, and of course, safety was around knowing, what are we doing here? There's shotguns around and stuff like that. So this is how the experience started. And but we never had enough time to actually spend time here to really integrate and learn about what is Saskatchewan all about. So when this opportunity came up to be the chief nurse for the province, I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is
everything's aligning.
Beyond the dream, because my dream was to be a head nurse of the hospital, and this is what my mother-in-law was, and I always look up to her. As I said, she was my role model in more ways than one, and I had this dream, and in those days she wore a dark blue uniform with white stripe, and I loved it. I thought, okay, one day
I'm going to wear that too.
That's right. Well, by the time I achieved that goal, we were not wearing uniform, we were wearing street clothes, and lots of things have changed. But at the same time, as I achieved that part, then I had that next journey that I had to embrace, which was really to, live and work in different parts of Canada and experience but also influence nursing.
Yes. Well, you certainly have from your perch, that's for sure. What would you say the biggest changes in nursing are today from when you started?
I think, in the days when I graduated from nursing, nursing was very task-oriented, very functional. Like, we learn how to do intravenous, we learn how to do catheter, we learn how to do this. And that has evolved into being a part of the interdisciplinary team and being able to meet patients' needs by the best each profession can offer. And that position nursing to be that person that really looks at the whole person, as I mentioned, and coordinate that whole piece and make sure that every aspect of that the need that the person have, a patient has, a client has, is being met. So this is, I think, where I see the largest difference, like really being from, the being very task oriented to be coordinator of care, and that just seeing the whole person and being able to speak for the whole person and engage the person in that conversation. Because, like we used to have the body of knowledge and we would tell people what they need to do, and often they will expect that we tell them what they need to do. And that has shifted significantly, because our patients are informed and they look after their own health, and they're really engaged at a different level. So we need to be able to build on that, to really understand, first of all, where they're coming from and what their goals are, and then being able to build from there.
That's quite a shift, especially when everybody can access Dr. Google before they come and visit you.
Yeah, but that is okay, because it tells me as a nurse that this person is engaged in their own health.
Right.
And you always look for that, because we are well beyond us having all the answers and telling people what to do. People don't want that anymore, right? So that is quite amazing. And it resulted in amazing things, or what people actually, when I was in home care and was a regional director for 2 huge regions in Ontario, this was the big eye opener, experiencing how much people do for themselves. And these are people that have multiple complex health issues, and how much they do for themselves. And not only how much they do for themselves in their, regular lives, in their homes, in their environment, their community, but also how much other people do for them, or their family members, or their friends, or their neighbors. This was a significant eye opener for me.
So interesting. Now, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Before we got on this podcast, dear listeners, I had the opportunity to see Liliana drink from a gorgeous cup and saucer set. I wonder if you would share that with us. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
And so that inspired me also to pull out my mom's set as well. Liliana, that is stunning. Can you share with us where you found that and what prompted this collection for you?
So, thank you for allowing me to share. I think this is just so gorgeous. I can't.
It's stunning. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. But you know where it started? It did start from learning about Saskatchewan.
How so?
Really learning about, what their culture was all about, and seeing, because on the property itself, I told the original house was still there. So, I always like to, whenever we came, I like to go and explore. And that was just amazing. Like, so many years after, nobody ever lived in that house anymore because the house didn't even have foundation. It was just parked on the property elsewhere. But, I did find the chest, one of these old-fashioned wooden chests with clothes in it.
Oh, wow.
And the clothes were beautiful. And this is from I don't think it's from the pioneer woman who lived in the house. She was one of the sisters. But I would think that she got it from her sister who lived in States, because lots of the labels were from Minneapolis, right?
Oh, wow.
From Minnesota. And then, but some of them are like beautiful suede, not suede, but like wool coats with big buttons. You could wear it today, a pink corset, and then those kind of things. So, so I always like to explore. And then just learning about, what did they use, and then exploring the town. Our town here nearest town has about 355 people. So whenever we're here, we get engaged. You would go to senior centers. I go to the grocery store, to the restaurant, to secondhand store, because secondhand store here is a social gathering place.
Oh,
right? So people come in, and then there is always coffee and cookies served, and then there's a chat. Men stay at the table and they chat, and the women go around and browse. And this is where I discovered some of the beauty of these cups. So one year then I bought enough sets, because I've collected enough to actually serve them at the Christmas dinner.
Oh, it must be beautiful.
The most beautiful display of art and beauty, because each of them is very different and very unique.
How extraordinary. Thank you for sharing that. I've often said that Croatia should have some secondhand stores, because I think there's a lot of stunning furniture and china and silverware that we would just enjoy. And I always think about, as you pointed out, the stories that are attached to those items. Why were they important? Where did they come from? What did they signify to the people who had them before us? I think that could be a terrific industry that we can start there in our retirement.
Here you go. And I have perfect person in Croatia who would love that.
Fantastic. Connections happening all over the place. Liliana, before we go, can you share with us, what has it meant to you to win the Croatian Women of Influence Award?
Carolyn, here it is. It's close to my heart here. When we all have a particular life path that we think, that we're living, and we often think that we are influencing it. But as I mentioned earlier, we're really pulled into it, and it's probably our life path is designed for us much before we are even born. When I got that award, for me, that was like coming home.
Oh.
It made the whole circle of all the things that I imagine I'm going to be doing. And as I mentioned, I wanted to be a head nurse, and then that went to the next thing and next thing. But actually, because for all of us, it is so critical to have a tribe of women that propel us and that really give us that air, that blow air in our wings so we can fly. And then for me, standing there with a group of women, with my tribe, so women of Croatian heritage who showed up every day and did their best to leave the world better than they found it that morning. For me, that was like really an experience, as I said, as coming home, and knowing that I'm standing with this tribe, being proud because we decided to make a difference.
How extraordinary. And you are extraordinary. And all of our winners are incredible women, just like you. So thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your tribe.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I wanted to say one thing, Carolyn, I would love to interview you. So maybe somewhere down the road, we have an opportunity to have this chat where I learn more about you and your heritage and your experiences.
It would be my pleasure. That's a great idea. Thank you so much. It's been so delightful speaking with you, Liliana. Thank you so much for sharing your story and opening up to us and our listeners. Croatian Women's Network, thank you again. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I have, stay tuned for an upcoming tribute to another incredible Croatian woman of influence who sacrificed everything for Croatia. And we'll hear more about that in a couple of weeks. I bid you all every happiness. Stay safe, be well, and we'll talk to you soon.